Okay, so I'm going to kick off the session. So good evening, everyone. Thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening. And welcome to InState's second professional development series, which is going to be centered on how to convert your summer internship into a full-time graduate offer. So for those of you guys who haven't met me yet, my name is Grace Masamba. I am a finance pathway coordinator here at InState. And for those of you guys who don't know a lot about InState just yet, I'll tell you guys that we are a newly registered charity, and we basically focus on broadening the access of corporate careers, notably in finance, law, and consulting, to students primarily from state-educated backgrounds. So the main way that we do this is through our mentoring program, and also we have our PDS series alongside a host of other initiatives which are open to the thousand of students that have registered to InState. So just a few housekeeping items. So if we can just all remember all to keep your microphones turned off throughout the session. And if you have any questions at all as we continue, feel free to drop them in the chat bar below. I will try to address them as much as possible during the session if they haven't already been addressed by the speakers. There will be time for a Q&A session at the end, so that's when I will try to address them in bulk. And also just a helpful reminder that this session will be recorded. So if you have any queries about that, feel free to turn off your cameras throughout the rest of the session. And that's all. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our amazing set of panelists. If you guys could all just please state your name, the degree that you're studying, what your university that you're coming from, and also what firm and division you're representing. So if we can start with Ayo, followed by Owen, and then Niamh.
Sure. So hi everyone, my name is Ayo Madabeje. I study politics and economics at the University of Nottingham. This summer I interned at Morgan Stanley, in particular the sales and trading division, and I received a full-time offer within the credit sales desk.
Hi everyone, my name is Owen. I study international business, Spanish and French at the University of Leeds. And this summer I did an internship at JP Morgan within sales and trading also. And that was within FX specifically.
Hi everyone, my name is Niamh Rogers. I actually completed my degree in business and management at Durham between 2014 and 2017. So I did a summer internship at EY in the summer of 2016 and then took on a full-time graduate position there in EY's financial services practice starting in September 2017.
That's great. Thank you all for those introductions. So I guess it would be great if in the same order, you guys can all describe your journey into finance and why it is that you chose the particular role or division that you guys have gone into and how you knew that that division was the right choice for you. So again, just starting with Ayo.
Yeah, sure thing. So I came into uni and I was kind of immersed into this whole finance investment banking route. I didn't know much about it at all when I first joined uni. Until someone from the year above kind of told me about finance, what it is, and then kind of introduced me to spring weeks and summer internships. So I just applied to some spring weeks, and I got one at JP Morgan. And what I really liked about JP Morgan spring week is that it was very holistic. So I didn't really know where within investment banking I wanted to go into, but I feel like the internship or the spring week was really good because I got a lot of exposure to loads of different divisions, and I kind of realized, especially within my degree, because I do politics and economics, that I wanted to do something related to markets, so either asset management, wealth management, or sales and trading. After that, after my spring week, I kind of got a bit more immersed into finance and the whole investment banking industry. And I joined something called Advancing Black Leaders, and that was run by Rare Recruitment. It was incredible. And I feel like within that, I kind of knew that sales and trading was for me just because I really enjoy fast-paced environments. I had done lots of sales before in retail and whatnot. So I think that's kind of how I got into sales and trading, and particular finance.
Yeah, so I think Ayo and Grace have heard my story like 1,000 times, but we actually used to practice before we got our internships, and I think they heard my story like so many times, but I'll just explain it for those that have never heard it. So opposite to Ayo, I kind of knew straight away that I wanted to do investment banking. So when I was around 14, 15, I used to get £10 from my dad every single week. And you know, £10 is not a lot So then one day I left school and I was like, what is the highest paying job in the whole world? And I think one of the top ones was like investment banking, and it was like trading. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to go home and spend all my money on trading, and I'm going to become like an overnight success, millionaire, be on the newspaper and all that. That did not happen. I went home. I think I spent all my life savings at the time, which was around £200, and I lost it all within an hour. And, you know, it's quite sad, obviously, but at the same time, I was like, okay, how are 3 to 4% of people making money from this? And straight away, I was interested. So I started waking up at 6 a.m. every single morning. And I was like, right, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to learn how to trade. And then I figured out the top two banks were like Goldman Sachs and like JP Morgan. And I was like, right, okay, I'm going to work for one of these two in the future. I just know I'm going to. So I had my mindset on that. And I had done sales my entire life. Like, I've had a few businesses in the past. So sales has always kind of been, you know, part of my life. And when you put two and two together, like sales and trading is like the perfect job for me, especially when my desk is hybrid. So we do trading and sales. So I got my first taste of investment banking in a spring week at Bank of America. And then I then did a internship, well, a placement at Pictet Asset Management in Madrid. And then I ended up getting offers from Goldman and JP. And just like Ayo and Grace, I had an ABL program, which is run by Rare Recruitment. So I kind of got to find out more about JP as a firm, and, you know, people there are amazing. I really got along with everyone there. So that was kind of an easy pick for me, because they're the ones that kind of taught me, you know, a lot of the things that I know now. So yeah, that's how I kind of, you know, got into investment banking, and that's how I ended up at JP.
So I think my experience is slightly different also, where I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do when I was in kind of my second year of uni. Everyone was applying for internships, so I was like, okay, I guess I should apply for an internship. Had no idea where to apply, what to do. So I just looked down the Times kind of top 100 graduate employers and started from there. And then as I started researching the different firms, I realized that I wanted to go into something where I'd get constant variety. So that's why I chose to apply for the Big Four. So I was fortunate to get my internship at EY, where I was interned in their financial services practice. So during that time, I had the opportunity to work with clients each day, see how they manage their businesses, see the breadth and depth of the clients and engagements that EY work with. And for me, that was kind of what sold it to me, that along with the people that I worked with while I was there. Everyone was so lovely and invested in helping you grow your career. And I just came out thinking, wow, one more year of uni, then I get to do this for the rest of my life. So that's kind of how I ended up there.
That's all great stuff. Thank you all for those introductions. I think in some of your answers, you actually provided the answer to the next question I'm going to ask. So if I could start with Niamh, followed by Owen, Ayo. Why did you choose your particular firms, and what is it that made your firms unique? Niamh, if you have anything to add to what you just finished saying as well.
Yeah, so as I said, my number one is always the people. And when I was kind of looking for somewhere I wanted to work, I asked myself the question, am I happy working with these people for as much time as I spend with my family each day, effectively? And the answer was overwhelmingly yes. Every kind of person and client that I interacted with, you know, we shared the same goal and the same vision for what we wanted to do. And for me, that was one of the key drivers. Also, the variety was one of the big bits for me as well. So, you know, with engagements at the Big Four, we kind of change engagements anywhere from every week to every year. So there's always, you know, different opportunities that you can get involved with. So yeah, they were my two big things.
I think my story is pretty similar. I mean, I think in the back of my head, I kind of knew, I think Ayo and Grace know this as well, when I got Goldman and JP, and I knew straight away I had to pick one. And I think in the back of my head, I just knew straight away JP was for me, because Goldman's a great firm, but I don't really know many people there. Whereas in JP, I kind of had connections already through ABL. And everybody that I spoke to, right from the very first Inside Day, I got along with so well. And, you know, I think within 4 weeks of me being in my internship, I said to one of my managers, I was like, this is going to sound really cringe, but I feel like this is a family. And he was just like, yeah, don't ever say that again, as a joke, obviously. But I think that's how I really felt. And to be honest, if you feel like that in a firm, I don't think you should pick another one. I mean, if you feel comfortable, I think it's all about the people. And I felt extremely comfortable. So yeah, that's the main reason why I picked JP.
Yeah, I'd have to echo what Niamh and Owen said. It's definitely the people. I feel like Morgan Stanley kind of has a reputation for being like a really nice firm. The people there people who work there are really, really, really nice. The culture is amazing. So I think that was my first motivator. Secondly, I wanted to work for a really good firm, kind of like Owen. I knew that Morgan Stanley was kind of a very reputable firm, so I definitely wanted to work there. And I think also what kind of makes Morgan Stanley a bit different from all the other banks is that it's very small. I think in terms of their workforce, there aren't many people who really work there. I don't know if anyone's been to Canary Wharf, but Morgan Stanley's office is tiny and it's right next to JP's. JP's is really tall and then Morgan Stanley's is absolutely tiny in comparison. But I think for me, what I like is that because the teams that I work with is really, really, really small, I get on really well with everyone very quickly. So it's like if you're in a team of maybe 5 people and then a team of 30 people, a team of 5 people, you tend to really get on with everyone really well. You know each other really well very quickly. And I think I wanted that in a team as well. So I think that's why I really like Morgan Stanley and their culture.
Thank you guys for those answers. There's some great insights into the firms that I don't think we can get on the website exactly, which is great. My next question is, just because Niamh, I realise that you are a senior consultant, so it would be nice to perhaps share what it is you do in your day-to-day role. And Ayo and Owen, if you guys can share what it is you guys do on your actual desk, what is it you trade, and perhaps why you like that particular desk compared to the others that could be available in your divisions, that would be great.
So this is going to sound very cliche, as I'm sure you've heard 100 times, but no 2 days are the same, and it is genuinely true. So where we work with quite a number of clients across a number of different engagements, we really don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know who we're going to be seeing each day and what it is we're going to be doing. But I'd say my typical day involves quite a mixture of internal meetings and client meetings. So internal meetings, speaking to my colleagues about different business development opportunities, networking with different people within the firm, and then speaking to clients as well, so helping them solve some of their problems, talking to them about some of the solutions that we can offer, and different things like that. So I'd say that the one bit of advice I'd have kind of when you're dealing with clients in that way is just to build rapport with them and just realize that, you know, everyone else is in the exact same situation as you, especially in the current climate, and just understanding that, you know, clients can seem quite intimidating at times, but really they're just normal people as well. So using those as opportunities to build relationships with different people, because at the heart of it, what we do is a relationship business. So having that in the forefront of your mind in your day-to-day activities really helps you out.
Cool. So I got an offer from credit sales, and I really like credit, I think mainly because it's kind of a hybrid between macro and micro. So I feel like I have that exposure to both macro and micro. So because I study politics and economics, I definitely wanted a macro element because I really like how kind of political events move the markets. Then also in terms of micro, you're kind of looking at specific companies. And so I find that particularly interesting as well. When I joined my internship, I had no idea what I wanted to do, just because obviously there's so many products that the markets trade. There's FX, there's currency, well, FX is currency, equity, commodities, lots of different stuff. And I feel like that's why I kind of really enjoyed my internship, and that I was rotational. So I learned a lot about rates, interest rate products. I learned a lot about FX. I learned a lot about credit. But I think what I really like about credit, again, is that micro, macro hybrid between the two. So yeah.
Yeah, I think so I'm in FX, and like I said, my desk is hybrid. So starting with what we do, what the desk does. The desk itself has institutional clients. So sometimes, well, not anymore because of lockdown, but afterwards, I'm guessing we'll do client meetings. And what we do on a day-to-day is we set prices. So within FX, so if a client wants to buy, for example, cable, so sterling dollar, we set a price for them and then we trade it for them. Sometimes we can also use internal traders to do that. We also create stock pitches. And the reason why I like the desk is because I love trading and I love sales. And this desk is literally like a hybrid. It's a mix of 50-50 between both of them. And the main reason why I like it as well is because you have to know a lot about everything. So if you're, for example, how can I say it? You could just be G10FX where you focus on the top 10 currencies, but my desk focuses on everything. Like I was doing like pitches on Kazakhstan. I was doing pitches on like, I don't know, like Libya, and you know that's what I enjoy. Like I literally had to learn about every single country, not every single one, but a lot of countries where something was happening. And I think when you work for these firms, like Niamh said, no day is the same. But I think what I really like is that even though no day is the same, it's like there's always so many things to learn, like so much to learn. And it's just, yeah, like there's so many different things. And that's, I think that's why I enjoy the desk.
Thank you all for sharing. And I guess it's great to hear the variety of topics that you can all cover in your roles. It seems to be a common trait that has been mentioned, amongst all of you. And I'm assuming that commercial awareness has been really important in making sure that you can actually cover what it is your desk needs. Do you guys have any advice to share for any participants on the call on how you can really solidify your commercial awareness, and maybe even share some resources that you find really useful as well? If we could start with Niamh, going on to Ayo and then Owen, please.
Yeah, definitely. And so for me, this is quite an easy one. So somewhere like EY and also a lot of the other kind of big firms, we've got so many internal resources. We've got experts in, you know, all the different topics. So just really leveraging that network would be my number one piece of advice, as well as independent research. So reaching out to different people, building those relationships and kind of learning from them every day, what it is they do, what their tips and tricks are, and the advice that they can give you on what's going on in the market.
Yeah, kind of like what Niamh said as well, really just speaking to people. I think that's the main thing, and a really good way to kind of keep on top of what's happening in the markets. I'd also say maybe a good way is to kind of watch YouTube videos. So I don't know if anyone's heard of Amplify Trading, but they do videos every morning on what's happened in the markets overnight. And I thought that was such a good way. It's kind of 20 minutes long, so not too long, but it doesn't seem like a chore when you're watching it. And I feel like it's also a really good way to kind of keep on top of the markets, because they look at loads of different assets. So they look at currency, they look at commodities, they look at rates, they look at credit, they look at loads of different things. So I feel like for me, especially preparing for my internship, that was a great way for me to be on top of the markets. Obviously, you've got Financial Times, you've got The Economist, but I feel like for me, I really love watching videos because it really makes things stick. And I really kind of looking at things more visually and hearing conversations and hearing what traders have to say about things. So I think for me, that was the best way. So, I mean, yeah, just subscribe to Amplify Trading on YouTube. You can also follow them on Twitter, and they give you kind of live reviews on what's happening.
Yeah, I love my technical knowledge. So I made a Twitter and I followed like loads of hedge fund managers, and they love technicals. Like these hedge fund managers are crazy. They tweet like at least every 5 minutes about something, and it's crazy because the kind of ideas that they come up with, you like, I don't know, like there's a few ideas that I've seen on Twitter that I've definitely used in some pitches because it's really good. So I think Twitter, find a community of hedge fund managers that are really good. Eric Townsend is my favorite. He's like the best hedge fund manager I've heard. He's very controversial, and yeah, he stands out. I would say FT news podcast at 6 a.m. every day. That really helped me out. I listened to it every single morning for like 6 months straight. Bloomberg Surveillance, I heard that every single day as well. And then just have Bloomberg Radio on throughout the day, and then read the FT. That's literally all I did. And then I would have like 3 phone calls a day with people. Like me, Grace, and Ayo. Before our interviews, we used to call like almost on a daily basis. So yeah, and even during our internships, we were calling like almost daily. And yeah, I think sharing ideas with other people, I think that's how you build knowledge.
Thank you guys for sharing. I hope people are taking notes on the call, because I definitely made a note of that hedge fund manager. So thank you, Owen. I now want to move on to more questions that are focused on the application process, as I'm assuming a lot of the people that will be watching this PDS will be going through various different stages of it. So can you guys please just share the application process for your respective firms? And I guess the first step of that process as well is the CV. So how did you approach that initial stage in order to make sure that you actually were successful throughout the rest of the application process as well? If we could start this time with Ayo, moving on to Owen, and then Niamh, that would be great, please.
Yeah, sure. So with Morgan Stanley, it's quite long. So you have your CV, then you have to submit a cover letter, then you have to do a test. It depends on which division you apply for, but if it's sales and trading, you do a numerical test, kind of like a non-verbal test, and then a situation judgment test. Based on all 3 of those, they'll kind of filter out whether or not you get through to the next round. The next round is a first round telephone interview, which is very competency heavy. It's very kind of conversational. So there's that. Then there's the second round telephone interview, which is very much like the first, but you kind of get a bit more pushback from the interviewers. And then finally is the assessment centre, where there's a technical interview, a case study, and then 2 kind of competency interviews. So the Morgan Stanley application process is quite long, quite rigorous. But again, like if anyone needs any help, just feel free to message me. In terms of CV, I would say that a massive piece of advice I'd give is that nothing is particularly irrelevant. So for me, for instance, I put a lot of my kind of retail experience down on my CV because I was applying to sales and trading. That's very relevant. Like I've Grace and Owen have heard this all the time, but I put McDonald's down on my CV because those transferable skills are important. So I'd say, like, don't discount small things. Make sure you kind of put everything down. That's what I would say. And then a massive kind of piece of advice I would always give is to make sure to quantify as well. Try and make your CV snappy. Try not to ramble on. But I think that's kind of the main advice that I would give in terms of CV applications.
Interview process for GP. So apply, I think you submit CV, a cover letter, and then you receive straight away, I'm not sure if they've changed it this year, straight away you should receive a video interview within 1 or 2 days, I'm not sure. You do the video interview, and then after that, I'm pretty sure you have to do a test, and I don't think it's a numerical, I think it's a game where you get personalized results after that kind of tell you your personality traits. And if you apply for trading and they think trading's not for you, then they might recommend you another role. And you might, you probably still will get invited to an interview if you're successful, if you're good at, if you do well on the video interview. Once you get through to that, you get to the assessment center. And when I did it, it was 3 interviews in the morning from 8 until 12. And then afterwards, you may or may not have more. It doesn't mean anything. I know people that have had 3 interviews and still got the offers. I had 8 interviews. That was because I was interviewed by 4 desks. And if you get interviewed by more or less, it literally doesn't mean anything. It just means people want to get to know you a bit better. And yeah, I would say in terms of changing, adjusting CV/cover letters, I'd say just keep doing it. Like, honestly, work on your CV every week, every single week. To this day, I still change my CV. So I would say do that. In terms of cover letter, try to get a bit personal. Like Ayo said, include, McDonald's. Yeah, that's good. I think it shows a lot about you. I'm sure Ayo might go into detail a bit later. But try to get a bit personal, not too much. But then through your cover letter, you're showing a bit of your personality. So those are my tips.
So my personal experience is probably slightly outdated, but I am aware of what the EY application process is now. So for the summer internship, you start by doing application form. So EY actually don't look at CVs or cover letters. It's just kind of some basic information about you. So they do blind recruitment. So everything is kind of anonymized at the beginning, so everyone's kind of got a fair shot at the role. Then they do online assessments, so the usual kind of numerical, verbal, reasoning tests, followed by a job simulation. So this is aimed at kind of giving everyone the opportunity to experience what it would actually be like to work at EY and the types of problems and challenges you kind of be looking at on a daily basis. And then following that, you have the experience day, which is effectively the assessment center, where you do kind of a range of activities in groups independently and interact with people kind of across the business to get a feel of what it would be like. And then for the graduate program, there's also a final interview on top of that, which will be with kind of a associate partner in the firm, where they just get to know you a little bit better. But I appreciate that a number of firms also do ask for CVs. So my CV top tips are definitely ask people to read it for you. For some reason, when I was applying, I don't know, I was embarrassed to give my CV to people to read. But yeah, ask people for help, tips, tricks. There's no such thing as too many comments on your CV. So just share it with your friends and family and ask for their thoughts. And also, as Owen said, make sure you're constantly evolving it. You're always learning new things and getting new experiences. So make sure they're all reflected there. Honestly as well, because at the end of the day they're hiring a real person, so if you can let as much of your personality shine through in that CV and cover letter, the more the better.
Thank you all for that detailed advice. I just want to perhaps hone in on one particular part of the application process, which is the assessment centre. And I'm sure that's the stage that a lot of the firms are at the moment, and maybe a lot of people on this call might have pending in future. So I wanted to ask, how was your assessment centre experience? What was the most difficult interview question that you faced? And perhaps, Niamh, what is it that makes candidates stand out on the day? And what are the most memorable candidates to you like?
So my assessment centre, actually, it was a really good experience. I remember it fondly to this day. Got to see lots of different people from different backgrounds, got to meet lots of people in the firm, very high energy day. I really enjoyed it. And I think the things that make you stand out, it's a very fine balance between speaking enough and making sure that everyone is heard. And it's something that I probably, as a slightly louder person, I was really conscious of throughout the day, kind of making sure that you're giving everyone the opportunity to put their best foot forward at that stage. I think for me, the hardest interview question was during my interview, the interviewer asked me, "What do you know about me?" And that was a cue for me that I probably should have done some research on my interviewer before I got there. But again, it just shows that, you know, preparation is key. Use all the information you're given beforehand. Luckily, it wasn't detrimental to my role, the fact that I didn't know the answer to that question. But yeah, preparation is everything when it comes to these days.
Yeah, so I think in JP, all the interviews that I mean, I had 7 normal ones, which lasted half an hour, and my last one lasted an hour and a half. And the reason for that was when I was at JP, there was one managing director who was in New York at the time, and he really wanted to get to know me. So I was in Madrid, had gone back home, and we did an interview over Skype, and that was going to last half an hour. We ended up talking for an hour and a half. And he asked me about swaps and options, and I didn't know much about them back then. But that wasn't the hardest question. For me, the interviews were pretty relaxed, I think. At one point at JP, the person interviewing me closed the book, and he was like, "Okay, so let's talk about you, like who you are as a person." So I think it was really laid back. And then at Goldman, I had 3 interviews, and I think the hardest question I was asked was there, because I was asked, tell me about the top 10 economies, and then I told him the top 5. And then he was like, how do you think technology affects Goldman? I told him, and then he was like, how do you think it'll affect the clients? And I told him, and then he said, how do you think it'll affect the client's trades? How do you think it'll affect the client's trades portfolio? He just kept delving and delving and delving more into detail. And I think what I learned from that was, if you're going to talk about something, make sure you know it well, because if someone wants to dive deep down, they definitely will. And I think that happened at JP a few times, but luckily I kind of knew my technicals pretty well. That's why I think I say it was more relaxed, but I don't think it was. I think I just kind of had my technicals down. But yeah, make sure you do plenty of research on whatever you want to speak about. And if you know you don't know that much information, just make sure you say, you know, I know a little bit about this topic. Yeah, that's my advice.
Yeah, so kind of like Niamh, I really enjoyed my assessment centre. I enjoyed like all 4 interviews that I had. They were amazing. Advice I would give, especially for investment banking, sales and trading interviews, is you always get asked what's happening in the markets. And I feel like with that, that's your chance to take control in terms of the interview, because you can bring up whatever you want. I would always bring up political stuff because of my background. So I'd always bring up, oh, this is happening in the UK, this is happening in the US. And then we'd always have a conversation based on that. And there'll be times where even I'm teaching them stuff because they may not be as politically versed as I am. And so that was really interesting. So, I mean, that's advice I would give. Try and maybe take control of your interviews. As Owen said, if there's something you don't know, do not bring it up. Don't bring it up. On the other hand, if there's something you know a lot about, bring that up and you guys can have a really good conversation about that. So that's one thing I would say. In terms of the most difficult question I was asked a really weird question. They asked me, if James Gorman, who's the CEO of Morgan Stanley, if he asked you to change one thing about Morgan Stanley, what would it be and why? And I thought like that was quite weird, because it's like, I want to come here and criticize Morgan Stanley, but at the same time, it was a good question. I think I spoke about like diversity and all of that stuff, and that was good because again, you're kind of opening conversations with your interviewer. So that's what I would say. Another thing I would say in terms of assessment centers interviews is to always like show off your personality, really make your personality shine, like engage in conversations with interviewers. Like you'll be surprised, like if an interviewer says, hey, how are you? You can be like, I'm fine, how are you? Sort of like, I'm fine. It's just really, really small things, but really engage in those conversations with your interviewer. And I feel like that is what's going to make you stand out. Kind of unlike Owen, I don't really have the best kind of technical knowledge, but I always relied on my personality, and I always relied on what I knew I could really talk about, which for me was politics. So that's what I would say, and that's the advice that I would give.
I don't agree. You've got really good technical knowledge.
Thanks, Owen.
Thank you guys for the candid advice. Really appreciate it. Now, if we can just start moving on to the actual internship itself, just because I know with COVID, the structure of a lot of our internships this summer did change. So how did your internship in particular change in response to the changes with COVID? And if you guys can share any tips that you guys might have with adapting to working from home, that would be really helpful as well. Starting with Owen, then Ayo, then Niamh.
Work hard. I mean, my team would get in around, so the analyst on my team would get in around, at first, when I first started, she would get in around 6. So I would get in around 5:30 every single day for the whole 3 months. And I think the earliest I ever finished was 8 p.m. So, and I didn't need to do that. I really didn't need to do that. I think it's just because I was doing things that they wouldn't even ask me to do. So I think at one point I even made like an extra stock pitch, not stock pitch, just trade idea, which didn't ask me to do. And towards the end, usually halfway through, people start to burn out. I actually worked harder at the end, and my team actually told me that when they gave me the offer. They said, we could tell you worked harder, and that was insane. And I think that is such key. Like, if they see how hard you work and they see that you're one of the hardest working people, there's no reason for them not to hire you unless you majorly mess up doing something. So I would say that was I think what put me ahead a little bit. And I think in terms of the structure, it's not easy. I would say, you're home on your own the whole day. Luckily for me, I was in a Zoom call that runs through all day with the team, so that was really good because you feel like you've got somebody there. But it's really not easy. I think sometimes I would definitely recommend going out for a walk. You guys that maybe it still might be virtual next year. Definitely like take care of your mental health. Go out for a walk. Just look after yourself. Make sure you get enough food. And if you think, hey, like I might not be able to do that, then I would say just live at home and make sure your parents can look after you in some way. I would say the structure, I mean, it was all virtual. Meetings were pretty casual. I asked for a meeting at least once a week with the whole team. I would give a 5-minute phone call to everybody on the team. And that was pretty good. I think in person, it'd be harder to do that because people, I don't know, I think virtually, because they don't see you, they're more open to have a phone call with you and get more feedback. So I think that was really useful for me.
So in terms of Morgan Stanley, the structure is quite different because it's a rotational internship. So ours was meant to be 10 weeks, it was 7 weeks instead. We were on kind of 2 desks for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, and then we also had a training week at the beginning. In terms of advice, like Owen said, work hard, but especially for rotational internships, I'd say also work smart as well. If there's a desk that is showing a lot of interest in someone else, kind of get the hint and maybe move on to a different desk where you can get an offer from there. I think for me, I really wanted to be on FX, but I kind of got the gist that there was someone else who was sending, I think, 5 trade ideas a week, and I didn't really have time for that, especially on the desk that I was on, which was credit. So I was very persistent on credit. I got to learn the product much more. I networked more with the people on there, and that's how I was able to leverage my offer. So that's advice I would give, like especially for rotational internships, kind of be very persistent. I mean, don't put all your eggs in one basket for sure, but then at the same time, try and maybe focus on one desk. And yeah, just do the work with them, network with everyone as much as you can. In terms of online, very much like Owen said as well, I kind of found like a lot of people would really be open to networking with you and arranging calls with you. I think first of all, because it's much easier to just kind of arrange a call with someone than to go and get coffee. But then also because you're not in the office, they really want to get to know you more. So that's one thing I found in terms of like the internship being online. And I'd also say that HR very, very, very supportive as well. So definitely like have a good relationship with HR, keep in contact with, I think for Morgan Stanley anyway, you get assigned deans. So they're kind of like a mentor, speak to them all the time because they're absolutely amazing. The support that you get within these firms are incredible. So definitely utilize your network. So that's what I would say.
And similarly, so my kind of golden internship advice is always make the most of the opportunity, because you get such exposure to how the firm operates, who the key players are, who your key network should be, and generally kind of what you should expect from working there. You can only read so much online, so really kind of make the most of the opportunity while you're there to understand if the firm's the right fit for you, if you're the right fit for them, and whether or not that's really where you want to start your career. And in terms of work from home, kind of building on what both Ayo and Owen said, you need to establish some clear boundaries, I think. So whether that's going for a walk or, you know, whatever it is you need to do in the day, know where the line is and when you're going to start to burn out, because it's very easy to, you know, light the candle at both ends. But if that's not how you're going to thrive and how you're going to operate, make sure that you are still doing the things that are important to you outside work, whether that's, I don't know, meeting your family once a day for a coffee or cooking dinner, whatever it is. Decide that in advance and make sure you kind of build that into your schedule, because of course you're going to be busy, but make sure you have that little bit of time for yourself as well. Otherwise you're not going to do your best, you do yourself justice and perform your best during your internship.
Thank you everyone for that advice. And I especially want to thank, I guess, Owen and Niamh in particular for touching on burnouts and boundaries, because I think as you work from home, it's very hard to kind of have that home life, work life distinction. So I think it's something that we should all keep in mind, despite the pressures of trying to convert that, you know, coveted internship. Just moving on, what was the most difficult task or project that you guys had faced during your internship, and how did you overcome it? And for Niamh, for the interns that you may have worked with on your desk, how have they approached you when they came across problems or had any troubles, and how did they address those problems with you in a way that you liked? Starting with Ayo, moving on to Owen, and then Niamh for the answers, please.
So I'd say there were actually two standout projects that were quite difficult. My first one was on credit, and I think in general it's just quite difficult because it's a very, very, very technical desk. And because my background isn't as technical, and I was competing with people on the desk who had done like 3-4 internships before, I think that was quite difficult. I got a lot of imposter syndrome, but also in terms of actually understanding credit in itself, I found it a bit difficult. In terms of the advice I would give, it would be, again, to network. There was one person I got on with really, really well, and he really liked me. And because of that, we arranged calls every single day where I'd be able to just ask him whatever questions I wanted. And as a result, I was really able to kind of keep on top of things much easier. I was able to learn about the product much easier, thanks to those calls with him. So definitely utilize your network. Again, speak to analysts because they were in a very similar position. And so they would really understand. So I think for me, that was definitely the most difficult project, but having that network around me was really, really helpful. I'd say another thing that was quite difficult were the stock pitches. So at Morgan Stanley, you essentially have to do stock pitches every week. And this was fine, like it was okay, but because I was going through extenuating circumstances at the time, it was quite difficult for me to keep on top of things, do those stock pitches at a high standard. Again, I say this is where HR come in really handy. Make sure, like the thing is, you never know that it will happen to you until, God forbid, it does. So definitely speak to people, have that network, have kind of people around you that will understand. They were able to kind of take off the workload a bit, but also I was able to get much more assistance and much more help because of those stock pitches, and that was also really, really helpful as well. So those were, I'd say, the most difficult projects. But I'd say in terms of projects, if you do get a difficult project, make sure to speak to people in the firm, so that they can help you out as well. So that's what I would say.
My most difficult project was I had to learn how to code. I had to do a client task and I had a presentation the next day. So I think because I'm off cycle, I had to do a 3.25 month internship. And towards the middle of the internship, I was doing things right, I hope. And they started trusting me with client work. So instead of them doing it, they would say, hey, Owen, can you do this for a client? And I would say yes. And then so they would give me work and it needed to be done usually within an hour or two. And the thing is, an hour or two may not sound like much, but when you have a presentation the next day, some of you will know that is very stressful. So I had to do that, and then I had a presentation. My presentation deleted, so I had to like completely start over the day before. So I was like up all night, and then they also asked me to do something new, completely new. So I think what I did was, actually, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about it, but basically I had to learn how to code within like 2 weeks. So, you know, doing that whilst managing one presentation a week, whilst doing my daily task, which was sending out emails like 2-3 times a day, and those emails went out to like thousands of people. So it was a lot of pressure. But doing all these things and them adding up more and more, I think overall just became quite hard. But I think the hardest one was definitely like learning how to code in order to create this lifetime running data. I think I can definitely say that. So yeah, that was definitely my most difficult task. And I think one thing I learned from it was definitely time management, like learning how to manage my time very well. And I would say as you do things more and more, you eventually just get better and better and better. So I would say if you know you're going to be doing if you know you're going to be on Excel a lot, make sure you learn to use Excel before you get into the firm, because that will be so useful.
So over my kind of 3 years at EY, there've been definitely a few difficult tasks. So to pull on one would not be quite fair. But for me, the biggest challenge was always in financial services. We work across insurance, wealth and asset management, and banking and capital markets. So there's always a lot to learn. And especially as a new graduate, as an intern, I just didn't have all the knowledge about kind of how our clients operated, what their key risks were, what regulations they were affected by. So for me, it was always feeling like I didn't know how to solve the problem myself and having to ask people for support. But you know, that's definitely the right thing to do. If you don't know how to do it, ask the people around you and communicate. Also, from a time management perspective, people ask you to get things done in short deadlines sometimes. So definitely reaching out, letting them know what is possible and what isn't. Managing expectations of the people you work with would be kind of my top tips. And in terms of what really impresses me with kind of the interns and new graduates we have coming in, it's the people that do that from day one, who aren't afraid to ask questions and they don't know what's going on, who actively time manage and communicate with you when you should be receiving things. Even if it's, I physically can't get that done today, that's fine, but just make sure you let people know so they always know kind of when to expect things and they aren't left disappointed.
Just to add to that as well, if you realistically can do something, don't ever say no. Like, I remember before I even got in, I was talking to one of my friends who did the internship the year before, and they were just on the training floor. And this like VP came up to me, they were like, "Oh yeah, can you spend time with the children downstairs?" Because they had like a little insight day. And he was like, "Yeah, sure." And that itself built rapport with that VP. And that is a big thing. Like, so if you know you've got time to do something, don't ever say no. Don't ever say, "Oh, I might not." Like, make sure you always say yes to everything, as long as you can do it. If you can't do it, like Niamh said, then don't, because it's quite disappointing if you say you can do something and you don't do it.
Thank you all for that advice. I just want to say the floor is open to questions, so if anyone in the audience has anything that they want particularly answered, feel free to type it in the chat. Just because Owen mentioned coding, it was a question that was quite popular in our last PDS. People often, I think now we realize coding technology is going to be increasingly more important in banking and finance, and I guess particularly in sales and trading, as electronic trading continues to grow. So for Owen, how do you find that knowing how to code will be particularly useful in your role going forward? And do you think that applicants should go out of their way to perhaps learn how to pick up code? And I guess for Ayo and Niamh, in your respective divisions and in your respective roles, what role do you think the impact of technology or coding, programming in particular, could affect how things go forward?
I would say yes, definitely. If you've got the time to learn, then yeah. I mean, I still don't know how to code to this day. I would say if you have time to learn, then definitely do it. Luckily, we had like a little group chat over the summer, and one of our friends called Jerry, he knows how to code. So I kind of went to him to ask him for help. Like, I was like, if I was to do this, how would I do it? And I think that's part of, again, having a network. Like, you need to make sure you have a network that you can reach out to and be like, hey, I don't really know how to do this. It'd be great if you could like help me out. So I would say if you've got the time to learn how to code, definitely learn. Is it a massive priority that they look for? I wouldn't say so. Like, my team, I even asked them, is it really like, is it necessary? And they said no. But it's always going to be a bonus, I think. So if you have time, definitely learn.
Yes, I would say that technology is definitely very, very, very important. I would say, however, A lot of people kind of hear that and kind of think that, especially for sales, there isn't a role of a salesperson anymore, and that can't really be further from the truth. A lot of people really, really value that face-to-face interaction that you can get with an actual salesperson. So definitely technology is increasing within sales and trading within firms, and it is super important. But at the same time, the people and the salespeople and the actual traders behind the trades are also super, super, super important as well. So yeah.
So from my experience, we've done quite a lot of analysis on kind of what the key skills for the future are, and technology definitely comes up time and time again. Me personally, it's something I definitely need to improve on. Just as times change and opportunities evolve, you know, it's important you stay up to speed with kind of the latest, you know, trends and skills that people are going to need as we go forward. But you know, if you're fortunate enough to secure a internship or a graduate program, quite often there are so many internal resources for this at your respective firms. So whether that be learning opportunities, there's loads of them out there. So just make the most of them while you're there. I know that at EY it's something we don't quite do enough of probably. The firm have put out so much for us to get involved in. So it's actually taking the time and, you know, using those resources that are available to you.
Thank you for sharing your perspectives. Just a question for Ayo, seeing as she mentioned that she came across or experienced imposter syndrome at some stage during her internship, and I think it's something that we all go through to some extent, just feeling a bit like a fish out of water. Ayo, how did you personally overcome this particular challenge? And Owen and Niamh, if you have anything in particular that you can add, please feel free to chime in following her response.
Yeah, so it's actually funny. I came across someone who was an executive director within credit sales. She studied English and she made it. So I asked her the exact same question. And she said, honestly, I just have to get on with it. And honestly, I feel like that is the best piece of advice. Like, cool, like I don't really believe in kind of self-wallowing and saying, oh, but these people are better than me in XYZ. Like, genuinely get on with it. You got the internship for a reason. They believed in you for a reason. You're sitting there for a reason. So I genuinely say, believe in yourself, pick yourself up and do what you need to do. That's genuinely the advice that I would give. Like, it's not an accident that you were chosen amongst the 10,000, 20,000 applicants. So yeah, honestly, I would literally just say, get on with it, believe in yourself and keep pushing, because yeah, you're worth it and you got the internship for a reason.
And kind of building on that, I mean, this definitely isn't something that only happens at the beginning of your career. There have been many times where I've ended up in a meeting with some very senior people from some of our clients, and I've thought, wow, how am I here? Why am I here? What is my role? And yeah, as Ayo said, just remember all that hard work you put in to get there. You know, nothing happens by accident, and you've earned your spot. So own it and make the most of it, and put in the effort to kind of, you know, get where you need to be.
Yeah, I mean, halfway through, my team told me that they've had 3 interns, 2 from Oxford and 1 from Cambridge, and they studied like science or something. I remember telling Ayo or Grace, I was just like, what? Like, how am I gonna get it? I study a BA at University of Leeds, but at the end of the day, like Ayo and Niamh said, you're there for a reason, and I thought that gives me more of a reason to work harder than everybody else. Like, I want to show my hunger and passion, and that was my ultimate goal, like literally just to make the desk's life easier. And I think as long as you do that, as long as you make their life just a tiny bit easier and they notice that, they're going to want you there, because as soon as you're gone, it's like, well, you know, now we have to find somebody else to do it, or now we're going to have to do it ourselves. So I think that's key there. And obviously just making sure you get along with the team, because as smart as someone may be against you, or as personable as they may be, there is something about you that's got you there. So just make sure you believe in yourself, and I think you'll get whatever you want, really.
Thank you all for that candid advice. And just a question for you, Owen, seeing as you mentioned that networking was particularly important for your internship, you managed to squeeze in a lot of different catch-ups with people across your team despite a very intense schedule, as I can imagine. So do you have any advice for actually structuring your networking coffees and making sure that you strike the right balance between networking and actually getting the work done as well? And Ayo and Niamh, if you have anything to add, please feel free to after Owen's response.
Yeah, I mean, just don't be scared to ask. People at JP were so open to helping me, and I think the team really appreciated that. I would say networking is equally as important as working hard, because every single conversation that I had with traders, my manager would speak to them afterwards. Like, I know this for a fact, because my manager would say to me in our meetings, "Oh yeah, I spoke to James. He said this and this about you." And I think that is key. And I think the reason that the way to find a balance is, make sure that you check your calendar and make sure you ask your team if it's okay for you. Or maybe you don't have to ask them, but just make sure you let them know. Especially when it's virtual, your team has to know what you're doing 24/7. I know certain people that would send out like a weekly email every Friday being like, "This is what I've done, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what like I'm doing or has been completed." So I think that is really useful. But yeah, that's my advice.
So I would say two things. I say the first thing is to network with purpose. So when you know that you have a meeting with someone, go with an agenda, know what you're going to ask them, know who they are. I feel like there's nothing really more frustrating than networking with someone and it's just like, oh, so like, what's your day to day? Unless you're genuinely interested. Whereas if you've looked at what they do, you can have actual questions that they'll be genuinely impressed by. And then secondly, I'd say also listen as well. Listen to them when, I don't know, when they're speaking. For instance, I don't know, you speak to an ED and they say, oh, we're looking at hedge funds and how we can improve things for hedge funds. Go away and research something and say, oh, on the back of our conversation, I researched this. And it shows that you're productive. It shows that you actually listen to them. So that's what I would say in terms of networking. Then I'd also say, don't discount networking with people kind of lower from the firm. I feel like there's a lot of emphasis on only networking with managing directors and executive directors, but I got a lot of useful tips networking with analysts as well. They would kind of tell me who I should speak to and why, and how I should approach these people and what I should bring up because they have experience with those managing directors. So that's what I would say. Make sure you network with everyone. Don't just network with MDs. At the same time, definitely don't just network with analysts because at the end of the day, it is the MDs and the EDs who are going to make that final decision. But network with purpose and make sure you network with everyone to get a full holistic view of the firm and the desk that you're working on.
I think this question links back to something I said earlier around kind of making the most of the internship. And if you go in and just deliver the work that's been given to you and then end the internship, for me, that would be a wasted opportunity because this is your one chance to really get to know everyone that works in the business, what their roles are, what the business is really about. So, take those opportunities. And as Ayo said, do it with purpose, speak to the right people, the areas you're interested in, and do it tactically. There's always that one person that puts in a coffee with every single person in the whole firm with no purpose, no objectives, and then you get a few people who do it slightly more tactically, and that would definitely be my advice as well.
And also to add to that, try and leave a good impression to every single person you speak to. I was doing stock pitches. I didn't have to do stock pitches because I didn't want to get an offer from equities, but people from equities were telling the credit people how good I was, and that pushed me to get an offer. So whoever you are in contact with, leave a good impression. It doesn't matter if you don't think they're going to make a final decision. Trust me, they probably will. So just be wary of that too.
Thank you. Since we are approaching the last few minutes of the video call, I'd like to invite each of the panelists to just share one piece of advice that they really want to hammer through for everyone that's listening on the call, whether it be for applications or their internship in particular. So if we could start with Ayo, following by Owen, and then Niamh.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would genuinely say just believe in yourself, because for me, the biggest thing that I struggled with was imposter syndrome. Genuinely, the best piece of advice I got was to just get on with it. Believe in yourself. You are there for a reason. You got that offer for a reason. You are sitting there with so many other talented people for a reason. So that's genuinely what I would say. Like, just believe in yourself, push yourself, push yourself. That's another thing I'd say, literally push yourself to be the best person that you can be during these internships. And don't shy away from any opportunity, because kind of, as I said, with the equity stock pitches, no opportunity is wasted. So that's the piece of advice that I would give.
Yeah, I was going to say believe in yourself, but I would say the other piece of advice is work hard and work smart. Like, make sure, I think at times I did certain work. I spent, I think, an entire day on a project that I hadn't even been set because I thought it was going to help the team. And then the VP turned on, he was like, mate, like, we've got this already, like, internally. And I was like, what? So just make sure you work hard, but you also work smart. Like, make sure you ask them, do you think this would be helpful? And I think if you can make, within the 10 weeks or 5 weeks, however long it is, if you can make like one difference in that team that you will be remembered for, I don't see a reason why you shouldn't get the offer, as long as, you know, you've worked well and you've networked with people, because at the end of the internship, there's a round table where everybody speaks about you. And somebody even told me from the third week, my team wanted to give me the offer because they overheard one of the analysts overheard them talking. So right from the first day, they're going to be talking about you. So just make sure you get in, you do your work, you network, and, you know, just like Ayo said, believe in yourself.
So my piece of advice would be curious and let your personality shine through. So the be curious bit, that was one of the pieces of advice which EY's managing partner gave us on our very first day of the graduate program. And it's something that's stuck with me ever since. You know, you should always be looking to learn more, always be looking to learn from the people around you. So be curious in everything that you do and ask lots of questions. And then let your personality shine through, because ultimately these firms want to get to know who you are. They want you to hire real people with real personalities. So don't hide that during your experiences with them. And yeah, definitely let that shine through.
That's all great. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join our session, and a massive thank you again to all of our panelists who have shared some really incredible and useful advice, and I hope that will be of use to everyone who's going to watch this video. Also, just be sure that this isn't the last PDF series that we will be hosting. Our next one is scheduled for the 19th of November, and it's going to be a demystifying series into investment banking. So be sure to keep your eye out for that, and be sure to keep an eye out on all of our social media so that you don't miss any of the updates that we have coming forward. So I hope that you've all enjoyed this session. Feel free to share on LinkedIn and share it with your friends who may find it useful. And thank you all again for taking the time out of your evening to join us.
Thank you.